I'd like to introduce Kim Copel, who will share her stories of the riders of the Pony Express. Thank you, Kim.
Wanted, young, skinny wire fellers not over 18. Must be expert riders willing to risk death daily. Orphans preferred. Wages, $25 a week. Sounds a bit ominous, don't it, folks? Well, how do? I'm Warren Boston Upson, express rider for the Central Overland, California, and Pikes Peak Express Company. Most folks just call us the Pony Express. In March of 1860, I answered that ad, along with about 180 other fellers. Together, we helped to save the Union. Bet you're wondering how we done it. Well, I'm going to tell you. You see, back in them days, this country was in a terrible state. Why, we was fixing to go to war with one another, and we couldn't seem to get mail west of the Mississippi in less than 24 days. So President Buchanan put out a call for anyone who could come up with any method that would cut that time in half. There's three gentlemen who owned a freighting term by Russell, Majors, and Waddell, who came up with a plan, a relay of horses and men to carry the mail nearly the 2,000 miles between St. Joseph, Missouri and Sacramento, California in only 10 days. Blows your mind, don't it? This is how they've done it. You see, there are only two ways to really get messages, mail, and packages from the East Coast to the West Coast in them days. Now, freight by ship could take 2, maybe 3 months going around the Horn. Okay? A little bit quicker would be a stagecoach. Generally 24 to 30 days. Sometimes they couldn't travel at night, and they certainly couldn't travel on any type of trail. Now, we had a pickle because propaganda was forming on the West Coast to induce people to go with the Confederate States. The movers and the shakers were Confederate sympathizers, believe it or not. And President Buchanan wanted to save California and Nevada Territory from the Confederates because all gold was in California. All the silver was in Nevada Territory. He couldn't afford to lose them to the Confederates. So Russell, Majors, and Waddell came up with a system. First, they needed about 165 relay stations. That's where they would change out the horses, thinking that a horse could travel about 10 miles an hour before it was worn out. 15 to 20 miles apart. Now, a rider was finished about every 7,500 miles. So that's where the home stations were placed. These stations had yet to have 2/3 of them built in March of 1860. So out in Nevada Territory, Utah Territory, they had to build them and build them quick. Many didn't even have tops on them. They were just sand and sand bricks and sand floors, and some were built, hovels built into the side of the mountains, but they got it done. Now, riders needed about, as I said, 180 of them. Young, skinny wire fellers. Orphans? Not necessarily, but they couldn't be attached to anyone because they were giving their lives to the company. They would be staying at company residence. So if they had a family, they'd never get to go back and see them. Also in them days, because mostly men worked Women did not. Men took care of the family financially. If a man was killed on the job in a large company, the company then became responsible for the entire family. Russell Majors and Waddell just didn't want to have to deal with that, so they wanted unattached men. Why did they have to be skinny? Well, because for a horse to run at 10 miles an hour, it had to have as little weight on its back as possible. Okay? So they figured these young kids, probably 18 to 20 average, only the youngest one was, how old are you, son?
7.
7, how old are you? 8. The youngest rider was 11. Not much older than you. Now, can some of you folks, parents, grandparents, can you imagine letting your 11-year-old ride out all by himself in the middle of Paiute territory? Oldest one was you were hired. Oldest one was about in his 40s. He was a relief rider for his son when his son was shot. Okay? 120 pounds was the average weight they figured they wanted on the back of a horse, because they were also going to have to add a saddle and mochila, mail bags. That'd be about 13 pounds. Okay? That left 20 pounds for the mail. Let's talk about the mail here. Oh, before we go on to there, do you know these riders were paid well? $25 a week, $100 a month. Can you imagine getting paid that kind of money? You can do so much with that kind of money. Good money in them days. Dangerous job. So now, we're talking about the horses. Let's go on to the horses now, because we were talking about them before and how fast they could run. Well, Russell Majors and Waddell, they picked the finest horses they could find. Pintos, thoroughbreds, Morgans, Nevada Mustang. They needed about 400 of them, so that was quite a big purchase. So now let's talk about the mail. Now, the mail was carried in what is called a mochila. In Spanish, that usually translates to backpack or pack. The 4 baggage on the side are called cantinas, and that's where the mail was placed. The one on the right was left open for the station masters between stations to do a time card or to exchange messages. But the other 3 were locked in either St. Joseph or Sacramento, wherever the origin of the mail was. And it wasn't unlocked until it got to the end of the line. Okay? Now, you weren't sending messages and letters asking Aunt Edna how her garden was back in New Jersey. You know why? 2 reasons. One, this was reserved for very important mission messages. The other was, and they were written on very thin rice paper-like paper, okay, to keep the weight down. Cost $5 a half ounce in 1860. Now later in 1861, they lowered the price to about $1 a half ounce. So folks, I wouldn't really complain about postage today if I were you. Okay. Then the way this was designed, it was designed to sit on a saddle, free of the saddle, because these riders, in order to accomplish this 10-day mission, this finely tuned mission that was going to run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, they allowed only 2 minutes to change the mail from one horse to the next horse at each station. Most riders, like myself, we could do it in 30 seconds. But it had to be free of the saddle, so what would happen is we'd be coming in. It got to where we didn't even have to blow our horn. They just heard our horse coming. And we'd come riding in, and we'd hop off the horse, and we'd take if we weren't changing riders, we would take the mochila, throw it on the saddle of the next horse that station master had ready for us, hop up, and we were gone. We didn't stop to eat dinner, we didn't stop to eat lunch, we didn't stop to do nothing. The reason is, right behind us, the Sierra Nevada was the most treacherous part of the entire Pony Express Trail. 8 states, territory states, and this was the worst of it right here, mostly because of the terrain. Other states encountered snow, but we had the terrain. So there was always making up for this right here. Okay, when we would come west to east, we would end up behind, and they were making up for time that way. So keep that in mind. Now, I was known as one of the most skilled and bravest riders of all the Pony Express. Now, when my family moved out from Marion, Alabama, when my father was hired to be the editor of the Sacramento Union, I learned to rope and ride from the local vaqueros, and I soon surpassed their skills. I became an excellent horseman and an outdoorsman, so I was perfect for the job. So when Bolivar Roberts hired me, he assigned me to the most treacherous part of the trail, and my westernmost home station was Sportsman's Hall at Pollock Pines, California. My easternmost home station initially was right here in Genoa, Nevada territory. Now, my very first ride happened on April 4th of 1860. I took the mail from good old Sam Hamilton up there at Sportsman's Hall and headed off up towards Johnson Pass. By the time I hit Strawberry Station, I was in a blinding snowstorm. Again, this was April 4th. This is the Sierras. We all know what can happen. It was necessary to guide me to the top of Johnson Pass so that I could then travel down the 2 miles of Holly Grade to Lake Valley. I then proceeded up over Luther Pass, through Grass Lake, through the Aspens, down into Hope Valley, Pickett's Junction, down into Woodford's, and then on into Genoa, where I rested over until the mail was coming back from the east going westbound. So, my first ride going west was April 13th, and I found myself at the base of Holly Grade at midnight in a blinding snowstorm. I had to work my way up this grade, and about halfway up I encountered a pack of mules with everything unloaded from the back of the packs around them in the snow. Snow was belly high to each mule. I had to get off my horse and break the snow around each mule so that we could get past. By the time I got to the top of Holly Grade, I could see an encampment of men, and I knew what had happened. I couldn't stop to talk to them. I had to get to Sportsman's Hall because the mail was now late. It took me 3 hours to get up Holly Grade. Got into Sportsman's Hall, late. Sam Hamilton was late getting to Sacramento, so the mail could not go on the paddle wheel boat, the Antelope. So it had to be ridden in through Martinez and Benicia. So when you visit those towns, that's why there's Pony Express markers. Do you know what? We made it in 10 days. We accomplished what we set out to do. It arrived east. It arrived back in St. Joseph in 10 days, and it arrived in Sacramento in 10 days, so we were successful. Now, I may be the bravest and the most skilled rider in the entire Pony Express. The most famous rider with the fastest time ever was my friend, Robert Pony Bob Haslam. Now, Pony Bob Haslam was about a 20-year-old British gentleman who came out here, out west, and helped to build the Pony Express Trail. Now, when the Pony Express started on April 3rd of 1860, they had not yet finished Henry Van Sickle's Kingsbury Toll Road. It took about 6 weeks into the endeavor. When it was finished, they stationed Pony Bob Haslam at Friday Station on the lake side of the road. My easternmost home station then became Friday Station. And it was Pony Bob that came down through here and on out to Fort Churchill. So he only had to ride 75 miles. Had to go through the Sierras a bit, but he had it easy. He was thinking that he had it made. He soon realized something quite different. You see, one of his first trips out east, he got into Carson City. It was along about May of 1860, May 12th or so. Gets into Carson City to change horses, and there ain't no horses to change. Nobody around town either. Seemed kind of strange. So went on to Dayton, same thing happened, and headed on out towards Fort Churchill. Well, by the time he got to Fort Churchill, he found out what had happened. You see, just a few days earlier, out at Smith Station, where probably you'd know LaHontan at this time, these scoundrels by the name of Smith, these brothers, were known for cheating and card sharping and also not being too polite to the ladies. What had happened is they had kidnapped some Paiute women, held them hostage, and had their way with them. the Paiutes got quite upset, as you can imagine, and started up a ruckus. Well, one of the gentlemen from Smith Creek Station who hadn't been there when the Paiutes came in and tore up the station started heading back towards town, hollering that the Paiutes were coming to kill him. There was 10 of them. Next station, he said, well, there was 50. The next time he got into town, there was 100. So you get the impression that by Carson City, those Paiutes had multiplied quite a bit. So everybody took up arms, and they were going to go teach those Paiutes a lesson. So when Pony Bob Haslam got into Buckland Station and realized what had happened, the next rider who was supposed to take over would not go. He was too afeared to go. He was Chicken Liver. Now, Pony Bob knew that he signed up for a job and he was going to do his job, so he offered to take that rider's next leg of the journey. And they paid him $50 to do it. Well, he went all the way to Smith Creek Station without incident. But when he headed back after 9 hours with a westbound mail, he encountered at Clear Creek Station a massacre. While the station was burned, the horses was run off, and the station master was killed. And Pony Bob knew that what he had heard was now true. And he went back through every single station sounding the alarm. He convinced station masters and attendants to abandon the stations and head back to Carson City. By the time that he reached Friday Station, he had ridden 380 miles. One single rider, the longest ride in the entire Pony Express for one rider. And he was credited with saving many lives. He was also known as the fastest rider in the Pony Express. Along about March of 1861, got a new president, didn't we? And he gave an inaugural address, President Lincoln's inaugural address. Well, we didn't have no radios, televisions, or computers to let us hear that, did we? How out west were they going to find out what old President Lincoln had to say? Pony Express to the rescue. They added a few other horses and a few other riders and sent that inaugural address off from St. Joseph, Missouri, and lickety-split. I'm proud to say that I was one of those riders, and we accomplished that ride, the fastest ride in the entire company, in 7 days and 17 hours. Pony Bob Haslam, however, completed that ride 120 miles in 8 hours and 20 minutes. Oh, wounded. You see, he'd been shot by a Paiutes. He had a broken jaw with an arrow sticking out of his jaw and an arrow sticking out of his arm. He didn't stop to tend to it until he had passed that mochila to the next rider. Now, we weren't the only two famous riders in this area. No, we had some pretty famous relief riders too. Now, remember I mentioned the youngest rider was 11 years old? Bronco Charlie Miller out of Woodford's, California. Now, old Bronco Charlie Miller came out from New York with his brother, just like you two. Are you brothers or cousins? Friends, cousins, okay? Well, they was real bad boys back in New York, and their family wanted to teach them a lesson. I guess back in those days, in the 1860s, they had certain ways of dealing with naughty children. And they put the two kids on a ship to be ship hands for about a year or two until they could get straightened out. Well, about the time that the ship got in San Francisco, both Henry and Charlie jumped ship. Well, eventually they rounded up Henry, but they never got a hold of Charlie, and Charlie ended up living and working on a farm on a ranchero in California, and he learned to be an excellent rider and roper, such as myself, and when the word went out, he became a Pony Express rider, and he worked for several months on some very dangerous and important runs. Now also, he lived a very colorful life. While in later years, he ended up working for Buffalo Bill Cody in his Wild West show. Buffalo Bill Cody was a rider too when he was about 16 for a couple months till his mama got sick. But he always had that love for the Pony Express and wanted to share that history with everybody. And he recognized the spirit in Charlie and hired him. Now, Charlie was a colorful character, told tall tales, but for the most part, I think I told you the right story. Find out anything different, let me know. In town here, we had a 16-year-old who was a nephew of one of the founders of this town. Stephen Kinsey was a founder of this town along with Colonel John Reese, and his house is next door to Mormon Station there. Well, his nephew, Theodore Perry Hawkins, was a rider in his young days. He was a relief rider between here and Dayton and here and Lake Tahoe. He later went on to marry, have about 9 children, become a prominent citizen of Genoa, and for the remainder of his years owned the Dake House down there where the Genoa Mavericks are shooting it up this weekend. Okay? So we had some very colorful riders here in Sierra Nevada, and I'm proud to be one of them. Well, all good things come to an end, and along with what began on April 3rd of 1860 ended unceremoniously on October 24th of 1861. Now, for something that was lasting such a short time, folks sure have a fond sense of memory about it. Now, 100 years later, Waddell Smith, great-grandson of William Waddell, founded the National Pony Express Centennial Association celebration. 1,000 riders, took a lot more than that. 1,000 riders rode a reenactment between St. Joseph, Missouri and Sacramento, California. What began as a celebration turned into the National Pony Express Association in 1978. A few old gentlemen were sitting around a table and they decided that the history of the Pony Express was being lost. And they wanted to reestablish, identify, and rewrite the National Pony Express Trail. So they set up a system of how to restore the trail again, to identify it, to do annual rewrites, something similar to what Waddell Smith had done. And they were famous for many things. I mean, I'm sure many of you have seen the rewrite come through town. But they were famous for other things too. As a matter of fact, they made history in March and April of 1983. American River Canyon, over along Highway 50 going from Tahoe down to Placerville. Along about April 12th or so, a tremendous avalanche came down the side of the hill, because there had been a fire the year before and there were tremendous rains that year. An avalanche came down the side of the hill, crossed Highway 50, and nearly dammed up the American River. Folks, it was so deep, that pile of debris, that they actually did not know if anybody had been trapped in it. They had to search it to make sure. Nobody was trapped, no cars were trapped, nobody was hurt. But the result is that it was completely blocked off from Kybers to Little Norway. And the detour to get up there was 115 miles. So some Pony Express member who was who had originally been up there at Sportsman's Hall, Warren Upson's home station, and came up with the idea of the Pony Express. He was talking to the postmaster. I think they kind of were joking, but they said, hey, you know, the Pony Express could get it through. They wouldn't let a little avalanche stop them. And then a light bulb went on, because the actual historic trail was above the avalanche. So the call went out, and about 62 riders answered the call, both from Nevada and from California. And 62 gentlemen started on April 15th. What day is that? So you know what they were carrying and what was important. And they started carrying the mail back and forth, starting at 8 a.m., 6 days a week. Now, the government, the U.S. Postal Service said, well, you got to sign a contract and we got to pay you. Well, we're the National Pony Express Association, volunteer organization, nonprofit. We don't get paid. We don't take money. They said, no, there's got to be a nominal fee paid. So they put down $2 a day. So they got paid $2 a day. So for the next 6 weeks, they carried 60,000 pieces of mail. And they got it through. Now, What's the result of this? We have a contract with the United States Postal Service. We didn't back in 1860. We were a private organization. Today, there are 3 entities that legally can carry the U.S. mail. The United States Postal Service, the Coast Guard, the National Pony Express Association. We also have a reride every year. If you guys are local residents here or from Lake Tahoe or down the line in Carson, Dayton, you see us come through along about June. This is the 154th ride. It's going to enter Woodford's this year. It goes west to east. They kind of switch off each year, and it's going to enter Nevada about 9 a.m. on Thursday, April 12th. June? Yeah, thank you. I get confused. And I'm a rider. Yeah. It's going to come through June 12th. And it's going to come through Genoa. It's going to get here about 11 o'clock, and there's going to be a big celebration, Mormon Station. And it's a 150th signature event, just like this is, just like the Cowboy Festival is. And it's going to get through Nevada probably on the 14th of June. And enter into Ivapaw, Utah. So if you're anywhere along the way, it's a lot of fun to see. Now, along about 1990, the Pony Express made history once again. Women were allowed to ride for the first time, believe it or not. And Nevada, the state of Nevada, out of all 8 states, we had the first woman president of the National Pony Express Association. And my name is Kim Copel, and I'm the secretary of the Nevada Division of the National Pony Express Association. And there are lots of ways that you can find out about our organization. We have a booth there today in Mormon Station State Park, and I believe it's being manned by one of our national vice presidents and his wife. His wife is a descendant of Alexander Majors, so they keep it in the family. XPHomestation.com. XP, that's our trail marker. Homestation.com is how you can find out what the National Pony Express Association is doing. There's still time, folks, and you can get one from me today. You can send a letter by Pony Express if you didn't know that. Just fill out a form. I think you pay something like $5, mail it in, and you will your letter is a vignette. It's already set up for you. It'll represent a station in California this year, but it will go into the mochila pouch. And folks, I didn't explain when I was worn upson, but this is a present day mochila. The other ones were very small. This is present day. This is designed to go on a western saddle, and this will carry all the mail. But it will go into the cantinas in California, be locked, and be taken out in St. Joseph, Missouri, and given a special stamp that it traveled by Pony Express. Okay, so you can just take one of these and mail it in on your own. I also have membership forms. If you want to become a rider, you can join anytime. You don't have to be a rider. You can be interested in promoting the history of the event. So that's kind of what we're all about. And our history really is right here in Genoa and part of the beginnings of Nevada territory. Okay? Now I want to see how well everybody was listening, because I have 3 questions for you, and you can get a CD for a Nevada Territory, Pony Express Territory CD. Easy question. What ended, and I may not have said this, so if I didn't, I'll I completed my sentence. You guys may know anyway. What actually was the final thing that ended the Pony Express?
The telegraph.
Telegraph, absolutely. You know, and the most popular misconception was the Transcontinental Railroad, which came in 1869. Probably the word transcontinental is in there. And actually, when the Pony Express was running, we had the telegraph coming through Genoa and out to Carson City. It was General B's grapevine line. So the telegraph was being built at the same time the Pony Express was running. So the Pony Express was never meant to be a permanent thing. Okay, it was meant to be a band-aid, just so you guys know that. So, we riders ended up working for Wells Fargo or joining the Civil War, fighting for the North or the South. So we just knew it was a temporary thing. So next question, what were the 3 entities that are now allowed to carry the U.S. mail? The gentleman in the back had his hand up first, I'm sorry.
Coast Guard, Pony Express, U.S. Mail.
You got it. National
Did
Pony.
it backwards.
No, all three. It doesn't matter. Whoever needs us. But the point is that if it was something was needed today, where they literally needed the horses to get the mail through somewhere, they could call on us, and we have a standing contract. Okay, now this is a little bit more difficult because I didn't actually tell you the answer, but I wanted to see if you guys were thinking about it. How did we help save the Union? How do you think it was that we actually helped to save the Union? I gave you the answer, but I didn't give it to you pointedly. Yes, sir.
The silver paid for the balancing the budget, sort of.
Well, yes, but how did the Pony Express, what was their role in saving the Union?
Facts. Just sharing the facts.
Getting it
talking across.
Yeah, just with the speed of getting the mail.
Here, you another one.
Yeah, we're the same family.
We're the
Oh,
same
no,
family.
And you're being a gentleman. You get it for the silver. Now, folks, you're not going to get out of here easy, okay? Because you know just about as much as I know now about the Pony Express, and you never know. One of these days, they may need to start the whole thing up again, and we may need lots of riders, okay? So I want you all to raise your right hand, because you're going to take the original oath that Warren Upson took in April of 1860. Hey, raise your right hand. Don't be afraid. I see you. Okay. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear. I do solemnly swear. By the great and living God. By the great and living God. That during my engagement. And while I am an employee. Of Russell, Majors, and Waddell. I will under no circumstances use profane language. We lost like some people that I will drink no intoxicating liquors. I will not quarrel or fight with any member of the firm. That I will not treat the animals cruelly. And that in every respect, I will conduct myself honestly. Be faithful to my duties. And so direct all my acts. To win the favor of my employers. So help me God. Congratulations, you're all Pony Express riders. Now we might have a few minutes here, so does anybody have any questions for either Warren Upson or for myself, Kim Copel? You, sir.
How many riders died on duty?
Well, you know, there's always a tale here and there. We feel one rider died on duty. About 3 died as a result of wounds being shot by arrows. Okay. 1 mochila was lost, not the same rider that died on duty. And let me explain. The rider that died on duty, that we believe this is a true story, although I don't have his name, he was shot off his horse, and the horse went on into the station. Another reason for these to be the way they were is if your horse was shot out from under you or injured or whatever, and riders did do this. They pick up the mochila and carry it on into the station because the mail must go through. The mochila that was found, that was, you know, it had nothing to do with the rider being killed. Or maybe it did, and the rider got away later. This story is a little muddy to me, but there was a mochila found, that is for sure, and had mail spread all around it. Well, the Paiutes or the Shoshone or whoever was on that trail there, think of this. These brave riders were protecting this with their lives. So they wondered what was so important in those bags that these men who they respected would protect this. When they got a hold of it, it was nothing but letters. It wasn't something that was valuable to them, so they just left it. And I think the mochila was found like almost a year later. So we know that the mochila, you know, one was lost for a while, and then about 3 riders were outright killed. There, did I answer your question? I just got going.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Are you all enjoying oh, you sir, yes.
We're from the Truckee area. There's attached to Martis Valley, there's a ranch called the Waddell Ranch. Do you know if there's?
I don't know if there's any connection, but it would be very interesting if it was. I believe the Waddell family did come out west. I know that the Majors stayed back east, and it very well could be a descendant, because I think William Waddell ended up here somewhere, because he became kind of connected with Bill Harrah, and that's why up at Harrah's there's the big statue. Is Bill Harrah. The story gets backwards, and I heard it for years the wrong way, but that Bill Harrah set the statue up, but the Pony Express gave the statue to Bill Harrah for his promotion of the history of the Pony Express. It used to sit at the base of Kingsbury grade because there was a park there, and now it's in front of Harris. So probably poor Bill is just rolling in his grave. But so yeah, you got me thinking. There very well could be some kind of connection. So well, if there aren't any more questions, oh, you sir.
At the end of the 18 months, did the company make a profit, or were they?
That's a good question. If we have a couple more minutes, do we have a couple more minutes? Okay. I don't go into this, but this is a tremendous story. This thing was set up to fail from the beginning. Russell got him into trouble. Russell, in his big mouth, he was the promoter. And when this came up, he says, "Oh, we can do it. We can do the horses." I figured it out. Majors and Waddell said, "You know, no. We can't afford this. This is a no-win situation." They wanted the freighting contract from the Army when the war started. So after Russell opened his big mouth and got him, they all backed each other up because that's what they did. They were very honest men, and they said, "Okay, we'll go with this. We know we won't make money, but because we're doing this," there was like a handshake that, "Yeah, we'll give you the Army freighting contract," because they were freighters. Never happened. They went bankrupt. Even Russell, Russell's first name, was arrested like on New Year's Eve in 1861, Christmas Eve, 1861, because he had absconded with some funds. I mean, all 3 men went completely bankrupt. But however, earlier on, in 1861, kind of about May or July, and this is where it gets, wake up, dude. I am long-winded. About May or so after the bankruptcy was just, was going through, and this is where it gets kind of convoluted. Stagecoach and freighting. Oh, I'm losing his name because I know his name really well too. Well, anyway, somebody else kind of owned the contract. He took it back, and he took back the loan or whatever it was, and then he sold it to Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo bought it from him, and I forgot the guy's name. It'll come to me after you all leave the room. So that is why many of us associate the Pony Express with Wells Fargo, because Wells Fargo ended up with it in the end. And then when the Telegraph was going to join October 24th, Wells Fargo just shut that end down. But they still operated some offshoots until they could get the Telegraph spread out. Pony Bob Haslam went on to, for several years, ran from Reno to Virginia City, and he also did a stint from Virginia City up to the lake as a Pony Express rider, still for Wells Fargo. And so you'll read along about 1864 or so, there's a famous race between Pony Bob and a stagecoach another rider for another, for Pacific Express Company from Reno up to there. So he did work for Wells Fargo as a messenger. And then Pony Bob ended up, doing several different things, and he died an older man in Chicago, Illinois, working for a hotel in Chicago, Illinois. But to the end of his days, he would pass out cards saying that, he had been a Pony Express rider. So I hope I answered that. Now, you guys don't even have to get up and get out of your seats, because the next person coming in can give you a lot of history about the pipe. So if you guys want to stick around and meet Sarah Winnemucca, I think that would be a very good, good use of your time. So I thank you for your attention. After Sarah Winnemucca is finished, then go visit the Pony Express booth because Sarah Winnemucca's alter ego.